Yeah, Dyliss, we should probably get rolling. Normally I ask people if they'll introduce themselves because they do a much better job than I will. So if you'd like to start off, tell us who you are, what you're going to do and why you're going to do it, and then we'll all be away. Thank you.
I would love to. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dilys Gartside. I've lived 10 years now in rural Dorset. For 30 years, I was a lawyer. And then in my mid-50s, I realized that I had to start practicing and teaching what I was preaching. And so I retrained as a cycling instructor to support my passion for being a campaigner for active travel. Now, that is quite a mouthful, but anyway, being an instructor enabled me to actually make a bit of an income, but of course, you'll never do this sort of role for money. Belinda will probably correct me, but in, I think, 2019, Dorset Council declared a climate and ecology emergency. So nearly 5 years ago now. And it has recognised as a council that these reductions, which is particularly 1/3 of the carbon emissions comes from Dorset's transport. And that in order to reduce these transport emissions, we need to look at the private sector because the agricultural sector is too far in the distance to tackle in the urgency we now have. But the private car motorist is possible. And if we look at COVID, it gave us the evidence we needed to be brave. People want to be active travellers. They do want to walk and cycle the shorter journeys. They are not just lazies who jump in the car from house door to car door. They want to be active. What stops them? Well, we saw it in COVID. Once the roads were clear of cars charging up and down, everyone got out on their bikes, cycles, scooters, you name it. They did it every day. Huge numbers of miles were covered. And they weren't just going out for the jolly on a Sunday afternoon. They were actually going to work, or if they could go to work, they were going out on their daily shopping trip that they're allowed to do by bike. It is fear of motor traffic that prevents them. And if you look at the village of Fontenelle Magna in North Dorset on the A350, there's a prime example there of people now are driving 100 yards from their house door to the church, to the shop, to the school. The other thing COVID showed us, I believe, was that change and a modal shift of transport takes time to embed. In Southampton, where I teach often, because that's where I came from before I moved to Dorset, we put in a lot of temporary cycle lanes. I say we, the council, put in a lot of temporary cycle lanes. And then they were whipped out again, and we had them in Blandford as well, I know. They were whipped out again after just 6 months. And I had lots of people, lots of clients, trainees coming to me and saying, I was just about to use those now I've got the skills to cycle, and they've gone again. Change takes time. If you take something out after 6 months, it will look as though it's not needed. It will look as though it's not being used, but it will be being observed. There are people sitting on that fence, looking down one side and thinking that's too scary, looking down the other side and thinking, I could do that. I will give it a go, but that takes up time. Don't take things out so quickly. And COVID also showed us that the inactive lifestyle equals vulnerability to disease and the big health hazards which affect us much more as we age. It is also now known, and this is medical research in the last decade even, that muscle inactivity leads to the big health hazards such as obesity, diabetes, heart disease, dementia, some of the cancers, in all ages, even children. And why is this muscle inactivity so prevalent now in society? Well, we can attribute much of it to over-dependency on the motor car since the 1970s, 80s. Some of us here will remember that we would happily walk 3 miles to school if it saved us a bus fare. Yeah, and home again. Now, road safety has greatly improved for car occupants, but at the cost of those outside of the car, i.e. those trying to be active travellers. Last night, I've just joined a new choir a week ago, and last night we had my second rehearsal in Blandford. I live in Oakford Fitzpaine, that is 6.5, maybe 7 miles from here. It's an easy cycle ride, or it should be. Okay, I went in daylight, just after the first shower went overhead, and I had to come back in the dark, but I have lights on a bike, and that shouldn't be a problem. So what are the hazards to cycling? What are the deterrents that stop people doing that journey? Well, come with me next time and you'll see. I would love to invite all of the councillors to come on a bike ride with me around their patch and discover what those barriers are. Some are physical, some are mental. On my journey last night, some of the physical ones are, and we have the North Dorset Trailway, and I'll add, it is the reason we moved to Dorset a decade ago, because we wanted to live in the countryside, but for years we couldn't because we did not want to make ourselves car dependent. Then the North Dorset Trailway had a bridge put over the Stour, and it linked to the two main villages of North Dorset, Sturmiston Newton to Blandford, 12 miles, a mere 12-mile journey on a trailway, the perfect solution. So we bought a house a mile off the trailway. What are the barriers? Why aren't people going to work and school like that? Because the condition of the trailway is lacking. It is not a hard surface. It would be ideal if it could be a harder surface, but even some of the parts that are better surfaced are now flooded. And I know we've had a lot of rain, but this mud and flood continues through the summer. There were potholes. You hit a pothole on a bike, you are putting yourself at risk of not coming out the other side in one bit. It is a cause of death for cyclists. What are the other barriers? Well, on the stretch I do, I've got to get onto the trailway. Access points onto the trailway are quite interesting to discover. It took me a long time when I moved here. I go on at Gaines Cross, which means 2.5 miles riding on the A357 before I go on at the sharp blind top of the hill, which some of you will know on the A357 between Shillingstone and Stourpane. That is a good access point, but it does mean you've got to be confident and able to cycle up onto that route. Then coming back in the dark was actually quite good because most of the cars are gone. I'd only encountered one car coming past me and he was very courteous, no problem. So just moving on from that, we said that road safety is increased for car occupants, but what happens if you're hit at a car at speed? Because this is the biggest discouragement. Cars have now increased in, and I'm going to read a little article I wrote here. Cars continue to grow in height and width to accommodate their new safety features, while the weight of them has doubled with electric. If you are hit at 30 miles an hour, you now have a 50% chance of dying, and it rises to 98% as speeds reach 40 miles an hour. Now, when you're in one of these lovely modern big cars, you are completely oblivious to the power. I've been in one, I don't own one, but I've been in one, and I felt I was in a tank. I don't believe the occupants of the car are aware of the impact or the speed at which they're travelling. I think you're too immune from it. Too cocooned, perhaps, is a better verb. Now let's look at car journeys. A third of all car journeys we travel are less than 2 miles. That's a 10-minute cycle ride. Half of all journeys are less than 5 miles. That's 25 minutes on a bicycle, even for an oldie like me, without electric bike. Trips, average trips, those short journeys, they include twice daily dog walkers. They include the school run. All regular journeys that could easily be transferred and be made on foot or by bike, or scooter if you're a school run with kids. So, Safe Schools Initiative. Now, you may have heard of these. This is where councils have decided and chosen very carefully after doing surveys, 1 or 2 pilot schools, and Dorchester has got a couple, and BCP area have around here, where the streets are shut to motor traffic for 1 hour at school opening time and school closing time to allow people not to stop cars being the prime obstacle around school areas. Now, this is resulting, and quite surprisingly, I think the council are quite surprised to see, it's already resulted in an 11% increase in walking, cycling and scooters to school, doing the whole journey into school. There will obviously be people who are parking just outside that zone and then walking in the last bit, but even that's better because they'll get used to walking. And I think kids love walking, they love cycling, and after a bit, pester power will work. And they will say, Mum, why are we driving 2 miles then to get out and walk half a mile? Why don't we just walk the whole thing or ride the whole thing? Now, with that in mind, I applied last year successfully, and I've just been successful this summer with funding from the government under the Big Bike Revival Scheme. Now, this is, I'm quite chuffed to get it because it usually goes to community interest companies and bigger outfits. I'm a one-man band, but hopefully I've got a track record, and that's why they've trusted me with it. But it is aimed at enabling and encouraging adults who don't currently cycle to start cycling and to cycle more often for more journeys and to start to change that modal shift away from car dependency. When I put my bid in for the funding, which lasts for the 7 months of summer, I have to prepare a detailed programme to get the funding, which I did, and it is adjustable. But I've said that what I want to do this summer is offer parents and grandparents training to know how to confidently cycle with those children to school. That's one of the things I want to do. And with that in mind, I'm starting with the safe schools and contacting them and the parents and grandparents who may be the carers who may take the children to school there. This is all in the last week. This is all just kicking off. So the funding I use is for one-to-one adult training, complete beginners, and I teach mostly beginners, people who've never cycled in their lives. After COVID, when I work in Southampton, I saw a phenomenal increase in the medical profession wanting to learn to cycle. All seniorities, quite amazing. More locally again, Little Lane Link is an active travel route that my husband and I initially were responsible for opening up back in 2018, because it was one of those obvious links to get to the trailway here in North Dorset for so many villages. You may have heard of it. We actually won the Cycling UK's National Campaign of the Year award with it. Dorset won a national campaign, wonderful. North Dorset even more. And it puts us on the map. Anyway, Little Lane was originally, it's an unclassified highway, but it has fallen in total disrepair after the railway line shut. So the Bath to Poole Railway, the Dorset and Somerset Railway closed in '66. Before that, that route had been used by kids to walk to school, down to the station and get on their train to go to Blandford. That's how they got there. But that road was then abandoned by Dorset Highways, and it went back to nature after 55 years. Even in August, that lane, and it was called Little Lane, it had lots of historical names too, but Mill Lane is the start of it, and then it becomes Little Lane. Only a mile long and almost flat, which is quite rare in Dorset, but even in August, you couldn't get down it because there was one stretch which we called the Lake, which was well named because it was probably 1/2 metre deep in muddy water, even in a sunny August where you've had a drought. So we managed to get European funding under the, come on, Belinda, help me out. What was the scheme we got it under, which is long gone, just before Brexit? Can't remember the name of the scheme. Yeah, you know.
Regional EU regional development funding.
Yeah,
I'm not sure there were several.
Yeah, well, the one that went out of action, we got it just before COVID, just before Brexit hit us. Anyway, it'll come back to me later. But we got 100% grant funding from Europe, the Leader Fund. That's what it was, the Leader Fund. I must admit, it was a year's work in paperwork for me to get that grant money, but we were awarded 42,500, and that meant we could completely, with Dorset Highways' blessing, dig up that lane and relay a hardcore base and a surfacing, which made that lane usable by walkers and cyclists, and it's still now, and horse riders, it's still a popular route. Unfortunately, there's no maintenance budget. So guess what? It's starting to fall into disrepair again after just 7 years. As part of getting that grant money, and here's another barrier to cycling, as part of getting that grant money, we obviously had to show that the route would be used and usable. And the barrier is at the far end, there is a 20-metre stretch, which is called the A357. And it is on a double blind bend, just like the old 350 through Fontmill Magna. You only need one barrier to stop people using a perfectly beautiful route. And the A357 with its double blind bends in a de-restricted speed limit zone of 60 miles an hour, to which you can say some traffic's coming around that was 70. and you don't see the vehicle until you've got 20 meters before it hits you. So nobody's going to use it. So we had to guarantee that we would get that crossing looked at by Dorset Highways. Part of my work on that grant application was to work with Dorset Highways to have a feasibility study done to move the 60-mile-an-hour speed limit further back the other side of the double bend. So we were in a 30-mile-an-hour limit when they came around those bends, and to put in some sort of improved crossing. We did plans, we did everything. We were told, yes, that's good. It's ticked all the boxes on the feasibility. We got the grant money, we did the lane, and 7 years on, that crossing has not been done. And you can imagine how I feel. I feel as though I lied to people. 20 miles an hour. Belinda wants to talk about this as well. 20 miles an hour. Why does it matter? Well, I've sent you a PowerPoint presentation, Graham, and I've got a few of the script.
Do you want me to go through it
with you?
I
I only
can
want
pick
to
it up
look
if
at
you
3
like.
or 4 of them, though. And I mean, I'll ask you which ones they are if you could be doing that. I'm looking at them on my screen in the corner. But you know, we say why 20 miles an hour? It's basically because this is the speed at which the human body can resist permanent injury. It is designed to recover from impact at 30 miles an hour. And that is the important bit of it. So if we look at slide number 1, thank you. You'll see there's a picture in the corner there. This is our village. This is Oakford Fitzpaine. Now, somebody said to me in Blandford last night, where's Oakford Fitzpaine? I thought, my goodness, this is only 6 miles away and people don't know it. You know, it's that different in rural Dorset. So there is Oakford Fitzpaine, and there's my friend's house. And at 3 o'clock this afternoon, no, 4 o'clock, I've been invited to Robin's 85th birthday party there. That is his front door. You can see it's on a convex bend. The road going up the hill behind is Satnav's Birmingham to Poole desire route. We have traffic coming down this lane at 50 miles an hour plus, and then they suddenly see a house and it's sticking out in the middle of the road and the brakes get slammed on. And quite frequently there's a car shunt with any cars parked there all smashed into each other because somebody's coming down so fast they didn't realise they would have to stop. That front door cannot be used by the residents because as soon as they put their foot outside their front door, they're on the road and they can't be seen. So they have to use a back door, and that door is double locked to make sure that no visiting grandchildren can even dream of going out of it. Could I have my 3rd slide, please, Graham?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Right. The UK and 130 other governments back in 2020, February 2020, agreed the Stockholm Declaration that said 20 miles an hour was right and it should be supported and rolled out as a policy in those nations. Now we're going to have a look at some of the reasons why. Could I have slide number 6? Right. And you'll see here the stopping distance of a car. It halves the stopping distance by reducing your speed just from 30 miles to 20 miles an hour. It halves the stopping distance. That is, instead of 6 car lengths, 3 car lengths. That is usually time for a driver to see and stop. And if you've ever had to do an emergency stop, you'll know just how terrifying that is, trying to stop in time. May I have slide number 8? Now, this one makes rather a good impact, I think, and I want you to look at it carefully. These numbers in red circles, and as we know, a red circle is a mandatory sign. It is an order, and a red one is an order not to do something. So that 70 says don't do 70 kilometers an hour, which equates to 50 miles per hour. So relate those in your mind. So the first one, if you fall, if you're hit at 50 miles an hour, it is like that little orange man falling out of a 6th floor window of a building. He is not going to survive. If he falls out of a 3rd floor window, that's what it's like being hit at 30 miles an hour. Chances of survival are pretty low, 50%, not brilliant. And it gets worse as you get older. Over 60, it goes up very fast, that fatality rate. But look at the third picture. Falling out of a first floor window is like being hit at 30 kilometers an hour, which actually equates to 18.6 miles per hour. May I please have slide number 9, the very next one? Okay, have a look at this diagram here. It shows how we treat pedestrians and the more vulnerable users in our built-up environment at the moment. We paint lines on the ground where they should cross, and they should be able to cross safely. Could I go on to slide 10, please, from there? Now imagine that that zebra crossing is a plank across a great chasm, which is the depth of falling from the 6th floor window. You see where I'm coming from? And the next slide to it, if you're hit at 20 miles an hour, that chasm, and if we go on to the next one slide, I think we'll see the two together. No, next one again. Okay, maybe I haven't got it in this one. But anyway, it shows the chasm reducing to the first floor flight. Sorry, Graham, you're doing a wonderful job for me. Thank you. I'll have that one next. This one you've got up. No, sorry, the one you've just had, the one you had. That's it. Thank you. So the effective speed at 40 miles an hour, average in all age groups, 31% are killed. At 30 miles an hour, 7%. At 20 miles an hour, it reduces to 1% chance of being killed. But look how it goes up when you become over 60. How many of us are here over 60? I'm not putting my hand up, but I suspect most of us. Okay, sorry, Belinda, not you. Over 60, so at 40 miles an hour, you haven't got much chance of survival. You've got a 2% chance of survival. A 30, well, 50% if you're pretty fit for your age. At 20 miles an hour, I've got a 95% chance of survival. I know what my vote goes with. I'm going to stop there and let other people talk.
And let me end this. Dyliss, thank you so much. I suspect that a lot of people are going to want to ask if you could put some of your facts down for us to look at, particularly where the funding came from, because that will be a great interest. But I must confess that I myself have not appreciated how much difference it makes just to slow down that extra 10 miles an hour. Extraordinary. So thank you very much. And
well, I can tell you where the facts and stats are to be found for absolute accuracy. You go to the National 20 Mile an Hour campaign website. There is so much information there. I couldn't possibly replicate it all. And it's all bang up to date, unlike some of these slides, which are already a year out of date.
Okay, well, I'm going to ask if Stuart would like to ask his question. And I'll go and look for that website, see if I can put it in the chat. Or yours.
Yeah, it's not a question. I'd just like to say I fully endorse what Dyliss has been saying. I'm a local councillor in Great Dunmow, near Stansted Airport. And the reason I became a councillor was to hopefully further my cause for reconnecting something called the Flitch Way. This was a disused railway running from Bishop Stortford through Dunmow to Braintree. And over the years, it's become completely disconnected from any sort of areas of population by the B1256, that was replaced by the A120, and the M11 prevented any safe access into Bishop Stortford. So I'm chair of something called the Flitchway Action Group, which is trying to rectify this. And I must say it's been an uphill struggle. We have had quite a lot of S106 monies, but no money at all from Essex County Council or Essex Highways. I did put in a major bid when the government was dishing out active travel money, and I think Essex got £11 million, all of which has been spent in the major conurbations, nothing on trying to link up rural areas. There are 3 big conurbations on the route. So Bishop Stortford, Dunmow and Braintree. Because the railway line followed the route of the old A120, which is now the B1256, there were lots of SMEs springing up there. There are lots of schools. I calculate that within a mile of the route, there's a population of in excess of 30,000 people. So Essex claiming that it wouldn't be viable because of low population is completely fallacious. And I say it's just a struggle trying to get funding and get Essex Highways, who actually own the track, involved. So thank you for your insight into how you've been progressing. Another thing I would like to do is also make the centre of Dunmow a 20-mile-an-hour zone. But thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting.
Good luck with your efforts, Stuart. Amanda.
Hello, and thank you, Dyliss. That was, I mean, loads of really interesting pointers for us, and also congratulations on what you've achieved for your area. So my questions, two things, thinking about Bawden-on-the-Water, where I am in the Cotswolds, so a rural area, much visited, with very limited roads, and therefore our A road that our village is just off from is the main spine road up through Bawden, the Fossway. And so we have a real problem with visitors coming in the wrong route into Bawden, because it's the quickest route on Google Maps. And so I've got two quick pointers that if you could add any insight into would really help us, because it's been such a big problem for us. One is Google Maps and getting routes changed, short of having a traffic regulation order and closing the road. And then the second one is, if you have the recipe, and I mean the menu, for how to build a decent surface for cycling and active travel, and it could be for horses as well. One of the issues we've got is our parish council, of which I'm a councillor, we do try to improve footpaths. We're in the Cotswold National Landscape, and I'm a board member of that, representing parishes in the North Cotswolds. We have 450 Cotswold wardens, volunteers that go out and help improve things. We've got to buy the materials for them, but have you got the recipe for building a good surface so that we can use that sort of specification, or even better, so that it's got that mix of good enough for durability and yet porous enough for biodiversity, and it's getting that magic recipe. So 2 questions for you, and just congratulations.
Okay. Well done, Amanda. I'm always inspired by the people who come on these talks. You know, it's the passion and the fight and the determination, and that's what gets us there. So you don't give up. That's the first thing. Yeah. If anyone tells you it's not possible, you just put that on the back burner. It is possible. Nothing's impossible.
Both ways round there. We come on these calls because of presenters like you. So thank you.
Right, now, well, I was going to say, have you got, I know you're talking about the surfacing. Let's talk about that first, perhaps. There is a new scheme now, which even was used in Dorset, which is quite amazing to me. But I'd heard of it before you came here. And Belinda, you might be able to help me on this. The NCN, the National Cycle Network route, that was resurfaced last year. Roland Tarr was responsible for getting it through. And it was the route from Maiden Castle going out, very historic route out to Martinstown. That was done, I believe, with this new system where it's all done on site. So the existing surface, they use one machine, the existing surface is churned up and it is mixed in the machine in situ with another material, and all the material is relayed and done by the one machine. Now, that is a surface that is a good usable surface. It's not cheap. But it doesn't mean that any material has got to be removed from site, because that was our problem with the Little Lane. We were not allowed to move all the rubbish and the debris from the highway. That was a huge problem for us. In fact, we had we had a team, we called them slugs. We were the supporters of the Little Lane Upkeep group. Yeah, we were slugs. And we had a team of 30 odd people going down that lane once a week for week after week after week and removing great lumps of brick and rock and stone that the machine had to throw up into the hedge, because the adjoining farmer blamed us for that, because we were doing something harmful. So we had manpower down there. But that shouldn't have been necessary. It should have been possible to have churned all that stuff, ground it down, mixed it and relayed it, rather than bringing in new material. It's environmentally common sense. And that's the way I'd like the North Dorset Trailway to be laid. If you go to, in my patch, Bristol and Bath, it probably had the first well-known route in the country. I've ridden that quite often. It's 16 miles. It takes an hour to drive from Bath to Bristol. It's a beastly journey by car. It takes me an hour and a half to cycle it. Why would you drive it? You know, it's a good bus ride if you've got the time, and it's a very quick train ride when they're running. But, you know, that's the sort of route we want, one that is usable all year round by all users, by all active travellers.
What one surface that I've been looking at is called FlexiPave, which is made from old tyre crumb and some sort of binding agents. It's mixed on site. It's fully permeable, so drainage isn't a problem. It's very durable and suitable for horses, cyclists, prams, or whatever.
That could be the one I'm talking about, then, couldn't it, Stuart?
It might be.
The tyre crumb bit is worrying me, though, because we've been looking at this within equestrian and schools playing surfaces and having a good deep look into what harmful chemicals there are in there that can leach out. So I'm not saying, Stuart, that what you're suggesting is that, just simply that that would be an area of interest to me with that recipe. Thank you.
Well, I know Chris Boardman used it extensively in Manchester when he was creating hundreds of miles of cycle routes.
It's in the last 2 years that the medical research has shown the carcinogenic properties, and I know that certain things have been taken out from some sensitive sites as a result of that research. But I'm not saying it applies to what you're talking about. I'm just saying that some surface mixes have got some what's been found to be harmful to the environment.
Yeah.
Amanda, if I have your email, I will do a bit of research and find out what we used on these two trailways I know of. One is on near the A32 up in Corhampton in Hampshire. One is, I'm pretty certain, Dorchester used it. So I'll find out what that system is called. I just haven't got information.
And I'd be interested to hear Stuart's as well.
Yeah, I think we ought to know all of this.
Yeah, and just for those who are on the call, Jennifer's not on the call today with us, is she? Jennifer Lanham, who's also here in Bawden, and she works for Cotswold National Landscape. She's the waterways specialist, so she's community development outreach for is the Thames Water funded project. But she specialises in having a look at how chemicals get into waterways.
Yeah.
And that's how she's done that research. So, or she's done the research into what the science says out there and the very latest in terms of human health, as well as harm in the rivers. So I will add my email address to anybody that's got anything that wants to add on that. Thank you. And thank you, Dyliss.
I was going to say, Amanda, as well, I think the other thing to do is identify one quick win, where if there's a route that you think would make a huge difference to a decent number of people, target that first.
And then we go to Belinda, please.
What about the Google Maps question, if I may?
Difficult one, isn't it? I know people have tried to combat it by approaching Strava, because we have a problem in our village. We have an iconic hill right above our village, and they come down there seeing if they can beat the world record for speed coming down on a bicycle. Now, it's not just motor cars, it's some of the lycra-clad, I was going to say louts, but lycra-clad lads who come down there at sort of 60 miles an hour to see if they can get the record. So we have, Strava have been approached to see if they will take that off as a racing route. Now, whether we can target Google Maps like that, I don't know. you know, but if you don't try, you don't do you?
It's accessing Google we found really, really challenging.
Yeah, I bet you did.
But I don't know whether you can have a campaign of lots of people, contacting them in bulk, so that their algorithm gets touched, and say, report that this is a no-through route or something like that, even though it is. The trouble is, it's an allowed route.
And that's what they'll answer you. I'm a cycle tourist as well, and I was cycling from the north of Scotland to the south of England 10 years ago, a month tour. And one day we came through a little village. It was just before we came out of Scotland, and we were on a side road running parallel to the main high street. And what we saw there, I have never seen in my life before. An articulated lorry had been using his sat-nav, Google Maps, to come down that route instead of the main road. And he had ignored the sign at the top of the road that said, not suitable for large vehicles, because his sat-nav said go. He had gone round this blind corner, and the road had been cut off there to make the new road, which was the main road now, and his cab was hanging 12 feet over the road, 12 feet above our heads, and they were waiting, the police were waiting for the cranes to come in and try and remove the lorry. The police said to me, he will be getting a custodial sentence for this. Signboards, they get ignored. So if we sign things and they're still ignored, how do we overcome the power of sat-nav and Google Maps?
See, without getting into any more detail in relation to Bawden, our parish council's just voted to ban coaches, which has been in the national press. So I mean, you know, it's a challenge. Thank you for all your input. Thank you.
Belinda.
Thanks. Yeah, we've actually had some success with Google Maps, and it was incredibly straightforward. So we had, well, we've got a couple of issues, and the bigger issue is more difficult because it requires national highways to cooperate with signs. But a bit like you, we've got so Lyme Regis, for those who don't know, is a tiny town of about 3,700 people, but we get upwards of 30,000 vehicles a day, or at least 30,000 visitors, mostly coming in private cars. So, and we also have an issue with through traffic. So people will come off the A35 and go through Lyme Regis if they're carrying on the coast down towards Devon. And they shouldn't. They should stay on the A35 and then go on the A road further down. But the sat-navs and is taking them through town. So that one is more difficult. Because apparently the lorries that have the legal sat-nav systems won't go through, but there's a lot that don't use it. And of course they get stuck because we've got a sort of a right angle bend right in the middle of town, very narrow roads, medieval buildings that are always having their gables knocked off by these huge lorries and buses and what have you. So we live with permanent gridlock. It's horrible. But we did have a recent success where Google Maps was directing people down towards what's known as the fossil pavement or the ammonite pavement. And this is actually a huge block of rock on one of the headlands, and it's only accessible from Lyme Regis, from the beach. But Google Maps was directing them down through a road that doesn't go anywhere. I mean, it goes towards the undercliff, and they just get stuck, and it's a very narrow lane. And I actually just asked the MP to write to Google Maps, and he did, and it stopped. And I did ask Dorset Highways to put a sign up to say no through road, no access to fossil pavement, ammonite pavement. But essentially the fact that Google Maps have stopped directing people that way, it seems to have stopped the main problem. So yeah, try your MP, you never know.
Actually kills two birds with one stone. Thank you so much, Belinda.
Yeah, I was amazed actually. He did it straight away, and Google Maps acknowledged it straight away and said, yes, of course, no problem. I mean, that's easier because it's not a through, it wasn't a through route and there was a clear issue. Whereas, a route that is a legal route may be more difficult for them. But and also on the surface, I can't remember the details, I'm afraid, but Dorset Council has won all sorts of awards for their highways department because they've got a system called a hotbox, where it's powered by solar panels at the at the depot near Dorchester. And so the stuff goes out in the lorries already hot. And that's why they can do so much on site. They also recycle a huge amount of what they're putting on road surfaces now is actually crushed up, recycled, you know, where roads have been broken up before. So they're winning lots of awards on things that they seem to be quite pioneering on. I should know the details because I was part of the team that looked at highways maintenance, but I can't remember them all, but I'll look them up for you and see if I can send them. And on Stuart's point about linking rural areas, that the same thing happened in Dorset, that we've got, so when Dorset became a unitary authority in 2019, they split off. Bournemouth, Christchurch and Poole at the eastern end is its own council now, and then Dorset Council is mostly the rural area. And a huge proportion, over 90% of the investment over the last 6, 7, 8 years has always gone into the urban part of Dorset. And it's easier to bid for funding where it's linking to existing infrastructure. So all of the development that's going on in active travel is going on in the east of the county. We're right over in the west, in the rural area. And not enough attention is being paid to it, as far as I'm concerned. It's definitely, as Dyliss was explaining, the barriers here. Well, okay, it's very, very hilly. We're just down the road from the highest point on the south coast. So that is a barrier. But the main barrier is the fact that the roads are too damn dangerous for cyclists and walkers. Did you want me to go on a bit, Graham, and talk about our 20 mile an hour zone experience?
Yes, please. Belinda.
Okay, so well, I was elected in a by-election to Dorset Council. I've been on the town council since 2019, and then was elected sort of a little bit by surprise in 2022. So yeah, just 2 years now. And one of the things that people asked me about a lot from different areas of town was about speeding and the fact that their roads weren't safe. Residential streets weren't safe. Some of the main roads are not safe either, but it was largely, and it was a mixture of people who live there speeding a lot because they're long straight roads. One of them is actually a school, where the primary school is. It's baffling that it's still 30 miles an hour there, but it's a rat run to the main road. So people speed there. And lots of dogs and cats were being killed or injured. And so that was one area. And then other areas are where there's sort of what had been country lanes, but are now really busy. And there's no pavement. And then we've got this impact of visitors parking wherever they can to avoid paying the rather expensive Dorset or Lyme Regis Town Council car park charges. And then that makes, they park on pavements, they block driveways, they cause, you know, the thoughtless parking round junction makes everything really dangerous. And pedestrians are forced to walk in the middle of the road. So there's a whole sort of host of different reasons. So I started talking to Dorset Council about what do we need to do to apply for 20 mile an hour speed limit, because all sorts of different areas of town are asking. So they've actually come up with a proposed zone. If we get it, it'll be the first in Dorset to be a zone as opposed to, you know, a limit on a road. And then we've got a zone effectively with a spur coming off it for one road, which is also a rat run to the main road. And we're at the process. So I go along with Dylys's sentiment of never give up, because it is mind-boggling how long it takes to get anything, even though I had a petition from one area of town. I had multiple emails from another area of town that was a bit better organised. There's somebody up there who got email addresses from all of her neighbours. So they were bombarding Dorset Council managers direct with, look at the state of this road, it's unsafe for us to walk, and people parking around a blind corner, and we're not safe, we keep being hit by traffic. So the impetus was there, but it was really hard getting it through the town council. So I had a lovely map with a proposed zone from Dorset Council. Lots of evidence. So I've got petitions from 2 different areas and lots of evidence of the, email traffic from another 3 different areas. So then I started talking on Dorset Council's advice. They said you will need to do Speedwatch monitoring for a year. So we set up Speedwatch. I got the Speedwatch coordinator for Dorset to come and do a presentation to the town management committee of the town council. At that meeting, loads and loads of residents turned up to explain why they were really exercised by the, by the problems, and how they wanted a speed limit. And still, it was really hard to get the town council to support the proposal. And so we got the Speedwatch going. That did take quite a while. It was kind of the wrong time of year. We did various bits of training. It was hard to, you're not allowed to, you have to get the police to come and risk assess where you do the Speedwatch locations. And it got a bit dispiriting because in the area where the people's dogs and cats are being killed, we never get anyone speeding. And we've tried now that the clocks have, what do they do? Go forward. We tried doing sort of the evening commuter time this week. We still didn't get anyone speeding. And part of the reason is they see us that you have to have 100 meters visibility. So they see us and they slow down, which is great for the police because we're doing their job, but not so great for us if we're trying to gather data for a 20-mile-an-hour application. However, we have caught a few people on Sidmouth Road, and we even caught them when the Police and Crime Commissioner. So we had a Dorset Day of Action 3 weeks ago, I think it was, and the police were kind of visiting all the places in Dorset that did their speed watch on that day. And the Police and Crime Commissioner, because he's up for election, was coming round and having his photo taken with all of us. So I'm very satisfied that very many people in town are really pleased that the town council is doing this. I've taken it through the town council twice now, because I just wanted to make sure that, it is an official policy. I had a meeting this morning with them to finalise the question. So we're going to do a survey of all residents, and we're making sure that we're going to make, sort of get enough data to identify which part of town they live in, and whether they're a resident or a worker or a business owner or visitor. And I just hope, because there are 2 people in the town council who are very opposed to it, and the only reason they're opposed to it is because they oppose me, and one of them is standing against me for the county council. So I hope that she's not going to use it, because the residents want this, and this is why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it because I'm a climate and ecological activist. I haven't invented it or decided, been to one of Dylys's lovely presentations and thought, oh, that's a good idea, let's do that for Lyme. It's arisen because so many people have written and asked us to do it, and they're really pleased on the doorstep when I'm going around. They're just saying, oh, that speeding is a terrible problem, and sometimes they don't even know that the proposal's in place. So one of the things I learned, interestingly, was that Bridport Town Council, just down the road from us, they got their application for 20-mile-an-hour speed limits in their town agreed by Dorset Council straight away. They didn't need to do a year's worth of speed watch monitoring. So I asked the traffic planners why that was, and it was because their town council commissioned a study, and the 20-mile-an-hour proposals emerged from that. But more importantly, it's because they had a neighbourhood plan which had already expressed that aspiration. So they had the neighbourhood plan in place, and that was backed up by the transport study. So they had that evidence already and didn't need to do a year's worth of speed watch monitoring, because it is hard work. It's really hard work. You can't do it in the rain. You can't do it if the lighting conditions are bad. It took a lot of time of my time organising the Speedwatch sessions. We're doing it in 2 different areas of town. Thankfully now I've persuaded somebody else to take over the admin, and now it's getting, it's quite fun. The first time we did it, we did get a bit of abuse, but and somebody stopped and said, "You're not entitled to take my vehicle registration number, and the policewoman said, well, actually I am, and so are all these people, because they're acting on the authority of the, what's his, Chief Constable of Dorset, or whatever the top dog's name title is. But actually since then, everyone just, they like us being there, and they you know, some people just sort of exaggerate how much they're slowing down, and they do a slow wave, and you know, they take the mick a bit, but it's actually all really good humoured, and it's nothing like us. We were worried it would be quite you know, potentially quite hostile after the first experience wasn't great. Charmouth is also one of the biggest things in my inbox from Charmouth is speeding down the main village and down towards the sea, and that's also where the primary school is. So we haven't been able to get the Speedwatch volunteers organised in Charmouth yet, but certainly the residents are very keen. So my advice would be to make sure that you've got enough sort of tangible support from the residents if you're struggling to get things through the town council, as I was. And then the other thing is, yeah, if you've got a neighbourhood plan or there's one in the offing, that might be a shortcut, because the policy is quite onerous, really. So now we're planning, we're going to do some social media. We've got a survey. We're going to do a leaflet to every household. And this is we as the town council. Yeah, just hope that we get enough support to do it. One of the other things that's not entirely clear is that Dorset's policy allows for so-called community 20-mile-an-hour schemes, which I think basically means that we pay for it. And when I asked them, how much are we talking about? Because I was looking at what we needed to put into this year's budget when we were looking at budgets back in October, November last year. And they said, oh, we don't know. And I said, well, what do you mean you don't know? If it's a policy, surely you've got a rough idea. Are we talking £10,000 or £100,000? Because I've got no idea. And they literally, because they said, oh, well, we haven't done a zone before, they said, oh, we don't know. So that wasn't very helpful. But I've since had a talk with somebody who says sort of between 10 and 15,000 at the most. So that's something that the town council, we've had to sort of accept. That might be something that we might have to pay for if it doesn't get accepted as a Dorset Council funded scheme. So that's sort of where we are now. We haven't done the application. I was hoping to get it in before the election, but I don't think we are. I think we're going to wait and get our responses back. So we put the application in with the two petitions I've already got from 2 years ago. All of the emails and the feedback and the evidence from public consultations about the need for better road safety. And then the results from the survey that the town council's carrying out. We'll put it all in together, I hope, shortly after the results come in, so very, very early June. And then fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We'll come back to you for an update, Belinda.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I thank you very much to everybody, and particularly to Dyliss and Belinda for their inputs. But thank you for those who asked sharp questions or have put notes into the chat. Let me just check before we say goodbye if there's anyone else who needs any questions or thoughts answered. I will be sending around the recording of the session, plus the presentation from Dyliss, plus I hope some of the information that people are going to be looking for in the next 10 minutes, so that they'll all send it to me and I can send it out to all of you. But thank you all so much for your time and your trouble, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
And a big
Take care, everybody.
thank you, not just to our presenters, but to Graham also, for coming up with so many wonderful subjects. I don't know how you do it, but you're getting some of the best presenters. I'm so pleased. Thank you.
I think it's very encouraging to see how much expertise there is around.
Yes, thank you, Graham.
Thank you, bye all.